soon as you come back, you realize you're back in the simple grind.
Yep. It's all the same. Nothing changes.
All right, welcome to the Town of Litchfield Board of Selectmen's meeting for July 28th. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the board's just coming out of a paperwork review. Next up on the agenda is review of items for consent. Jason, I don't have the manifest numbers for today.
Here.
You need this?
Nope.
Oh.
First on the agenda item is minutes for July 14th. Accounts payable for the amount of $69,828.77, and payroll, which I got to hunt for because it's the bottom of the wrong side here. Sorry guys, I usually check this and didn't see it. $30,854.46. In addition, we have a 2013 MS5 filing, a reappointment of Michael Croto to the Lower Merrimack River Advisory Committee. We also have the creation of the Capital Improvement Committee as approved by the 2014 Article 20, consistent with RSA 674:5-674:7. The appointment of John Poulos Jr., Patrick Cummings, and Elizabeth Vaughn to the Capital Improvement Committee. An abatement for timber tax map 22 lot 13, which is town-owned property. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 3-0-0. And I did neglect, Selectman Lemire and Selectman Perry are away on family vacation, so they're both excused from tonight's meeting. Next is request for items for other business. Do we have anything else we want to add to the agenda tonight?
It's not listed on here, but I'd like to talk about fireworks, if possible, and just where we stand with that. I know we were talking that we were going to
Do a hearing.
I just wanted to know what
Yep.
we're thinking, that's all.
Yep. Yeah, we can just do that in part of your update.
Yeah, that's
And it's
actually,
scheduled the hearing's scheduled in August, I think.
yeah, and actually, I had some questions about that anyway,
Okay.
so that's perfect.
We'll take it under old business, under your items. All right, nothing else? All right, we have a guest speaker tonight, the road agent's here to talk about the road improvements and for 2015 road improvements, and then also the status of the Route 102 intersection.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the 2015 road improvements.
Jason has his already.
Yep.
This is more of a, I would say more of a shopping list for, depending on the amount of money we have.
Am I to hand these down, or what?
No,
No, you have yours?
I have mine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, as you can see, if you go to the very bottom right-hand corner, that's the number. For what these are all feeder roads that are probably the worst in the community. Blue Jay Way, Albuquerque segment from Meadowbrook to Pinecrest, Nesson-Keg west of Albuquerque, and then Nesson-Keg east. We put it into two different phases. Page Road is in four phases. Pilgrim all at once. Pinecrest, phase one would be Albuquerque to Moose Hollow up through the Hillcrest. I mean, Moose Hollow to Hillcrest is part two, and the first part would be Albuquerque to Moose Hollow. If we had enough money, we would do both. It would come out to 194,000, somewhere in there. Robin Ave, Sybil, which is where we stopped this year, at the bottom of the hill, and go on to Roberts Road. Cutler Road hinges a lot on what we decide to do or when we would do, if we would do anything over there. But we do have it in here, from Page Road to the saw cut at Candle Ridge, because the other end is something we could probably overlay within a year or so. You're looking at the number, it's a pretty big number. If you were to try to do that at the 340 we do now, you're talking about 7.5 years. You can see a note on the bottom about Stark Lane North. That's based on a 2014 price, but we're always, pretty much to the good, so our estimate should be pretty strong, I would say. On the back pages kind of give you an idea, an aerial view of what from where to where. Albuquerque, pretty cut and dried. Blue Jay, if you remember back about 5 years ago, we did that section from Talent up to the bottom of that hill on Blue Jay. We're talking now from where that cut is all the way around. That road is really horrendous. Cutler Road, this goes from Candle Ridge to Page. We talked about widening it in some areas. Now, if Albuquerque were to go through to there and we were to do what we were proposing to do, it would change the numbers naturally. Keg, we would do the east side of it first probably, because we tightened up the other side. Then we would do the west. Let's see. What else we got?
Jack, is these roads in the order of what you define as a priority?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not in the list. It's kind of, we started with A and B. We went alphabetically. We would choose out of this. I mean, the worst of these is Page Road. Parts of Page. More, I would think, would be G, which would be Page Road Phase 3, 99 through Blue Pines to Albuquerque. That's the worst. Pilgrim is in bad shape, but only from the S turns over to Page. The other side could probably be just overlaid. Pinecrest, when you get in from Albuquerque to Moose Hollow, there are sections that are bad. You get up above Moose Hollow to Hillcrest, they're terrible. I'm sure you travel that road. It's dire need of something. Roberts Road is terrible. And we have brought Mike Lane out. Instead of doing a saw cut, we tightened that up so that it wouldn't make a mess of Mike Lane that we just did. So we brought it all the way out and went back up again. And naturally, Cutler goes back to what would be going on there. The aerials are pretty good, because they give you a real good idea of where everything is and where it's going.
So if we were gonna stick with the 340,000 next year, I'm assuming the priority would be Page Road West, Phase 3, Pilgrim Drive. Those are the ones you would try to do?
We would do probably 99 through the Pines up to Albuquerque, but we're looking at a number of 184,000. We got 76,872 to finish Stark.
So what we looked at here was wanting to lay out the next few years with the big projects. And then, you know, the way we, the way we're set up now is, you know, we broke out the first 170 in the operating budget. And then we broke another 170 out in a warrant article. So, sort of subdividing out all of those, wanted to refresh these, look at those. And then the other, you know, the other thought that we've had all along is, we do have secondary streets that much lower cost for the kind, you know, these are the major rebuilds. So this was, that was sort of the target for this list. So, you know, we don't want to commit all of those funds to the main projects. So, you know, what you will see next is, you know, this is sort of the step one was to say, hey, we've updated, here's the snapshot, here's where we are, here's the new data. And then the next part is for Jack and I to try to figure out, okay, how do we make the numbers work within that budget framework?
Which is what we did this year.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. I mean, we
Did some
had the
additional
number.
roads because we had extra money, so.
Yeah.
Speaking of this year, where, it's my understanding that almost all the projects are done, right? That we had planned this year,
Very much, yeah.
and the summer's not even over yet.
Mike is just finishing up. Just got the bill today. We hold 2% retainage. That'll be paid off, and then everything else is pretty much done other than a few little patches that we're gonna do here and there.
So we have the capability of getting these, a lot more projects done.
We could, if we had the funding, we could get a lot more projects done. One of the ideas, and I'll let you in on at least, you know, the idea we've kicked around, and we're not at a proposal level yet, so, you know, I don't want to freak anyone out on this. But, you know, one of the things we looked at here, you know, last year, we entertained for a little bit, what would happen if we did a bond? Front-loaded, got a lot of the, you know, did the money up front, did a lot of the projects up front. So, you know, we took another look at that as part of the reason I wanted to refresh some of these numbers again. Remember, the road improvement article is one of the most well-supported articles that we had on this year's ballot. So there clearly was an interest in that. So one of the ideas I'm trying to explore a little bit is the idea of what if we bonded like $1.2 million for roads. And my theory is you do 4 years of roads. So in round numbers, you're looking at $300,000 plus some interest a year for debt service if you're going to pay it off in 4 years. You're spending $360 now on pavement improvement. The two 170s, and we carry another 25 within the operating budget. So could we put together a package that could front load the work and also not raise taxes? Because we absorbed that additional 170 this year when the voters approved that article. So we're looking at that. So you may see that come back when we talk about articles as one of the scenarios on the list.
When you said absorb, what do you mean by absorb?
Well, we this year, between the budget and the warrant article, we took our road spending from, you know, we added the $170,000 of road spending. That's going to be baked into this year's tax rate. Because the voters voted for it, we're going to pay for it. So now, if I take that same level of spending, assume all other things equal, if I have that same level of spending next year, I don't have to raise on top of what I've already raised.
So you're talking about keeping 340 in the operating.
Right, so you
Should be flat.
yeah, to keep the spending level flat, just front load it so you get more of the cash in hand, get more of the projects done sooner. And, you know, because the trick with some of these too is the tap dance around on how to spread the $200,000, $300,000 project over, you know, that in some cases that's your entire budget, or there's an artificial division between sort of the budget as we've set it and the.
But if we were to go forward with $1.2 million bond, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Out of this list and out of the other secondary roads, what would be in the scope of that project? Or are we still saying 1.2 million, this is what we think we're gonna do, but priorities will change and we can shift things around? Cause I think if you're gonna sell it, you wanna sell it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, it would have to come off, it would have to come off of this list.
Right.
It would have to come off of this list with the understanding, if I, you know, in my thinking on this, that 1.2 million leaves us some ability to pick up some of the small side roads like we've done this year, because you're not committing your entire level of road spending to debt service, which has been sort of my concern, we talked about it last year, is I didn't want to commit it all that way.
Now, can we still use the highway block grant to pay that bond?
I would have a big problem with the bond, and I'll tell you why from a couple perspectives. If you read the general notes here, first off, estimates provided do not include significant modifications to the line and grade of existing roads unless noted, nor do they include any drainage improvements. So if you go forward with the bond, you're not gonna do it. If you go year to year, then you have the option of being able to do studies for the upcoming year, which the road agent budgets, I think, $18,000, or it used to be $18,000 in terms of engineering costs, to do those studies so that you can come forward with a firm, solid number. Secondarily, if you budget a $1.2 million bond or whatever it was for, 4 years, you said?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you're locked in, and if we end up having war in the Middle East, not that that's ever likely or possible, and oil goes through the roof, you know, asphalt costs and everything else are gonna go skyrocketing. At that point, you may end up having to cut back on what you committed to the voters on in order to make it up. Now, my personal opinion is I think you're better off going year to year and let the citizens decide. We may be in a situation, in some years where citizens don't have an appetite for spending money on road construction and not want to do that. Whereas we go forward with the bond, we lock them in.
Fair
That's
point.
my 2 cents worth.
Yep, that's, you know, the only observation I'd have is if we were going the bond route, I think our initial view is that the plan would be get as much of this work done in year one as possible, not spread it over the 4 years. Because I hear what you're saying about, you know, you may get less spending out of it. So that part, I think the view would be we would get as much done.
Well,
However, I agree that if we want to do more detailed design and engineering, if some of these would warrant it, and I guess I'd look to Jack, how many of these require drainage engineering versus their pavement projects? But that's fair. That's why I'm not giving you the final proposal tonight. I'm running it up the flagpole.
The other point I'll make is that if you go forward with a 4-year bond for 1.2 million, you just said you'd like to do it as quickly as you can. So let's assume you don't do it the first year, but you do it in the first 2 years. But you're still gonna be carrying payments for that debt in years 3 and 4, which means that we're not doing any road work, but on the other hand, we're still having to pay for the road work. And I understand you're getting it done earlier.
Right.
But, believe me, I'm sure Mr. Pinciero would agree that there's a lot more that needs to be done for the town's roads than just what he's got listed here.
Right. Well, but now, if the logic, and I appreciate this, and this is where I'm trying to find something that works as a scenario, because what I outlined was a scenario where you commit about $300,000 toward debt service, which leaves you at your current rate of spending about $50,000 or $60,000 for other pavement repair each year. So I wouldn't want to recommend committing your entire road repair spending to debt service, because you're right, things break up every year. We sat here last year about this time and said, hey, this is what we want to do in 2014. Winter changed some of those plans.
Right.
So, you know, we're always against that. Okay, that's
I mean, I
fair.
think, you know, I understand the concern about the bond and the fact that knowing Jack and his crew and the crew he has, he'll get a lot of this work done and that bond coverage in the first 2 years, and then, if not the first year, and then the issue is, do we have other maintenance happening years 2, 3, and 4? I'm one of the better option is to take these projects, build them in packages, and have them freestanding warrants just to have them as packages. Let's go out there for the 170 again, maybe even more, and ask for it. We in addition to our the block grant, we're looking for another $225,000 to do these projects, and then as a freestanding warrant, and here's some more, And if the voters want it, they'll do it, and,
They don't want it, they won't.
right. It doesn't stop, I mean, obviously the block grant, so we can still do the block grant work anyway.
No, I mean, that's kind of what we're struggling with on all of this, so, finding some options to think about, because, it's 2.2 million, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean,
Well-
part of me likes getting the work done quickly, but, I mean, the other part I hesitate is a bond, I've now gone from asking a question that needs a simple majority to a 3/5.
Yeah, I think the thing about the bond that's nice is that it's a flat payment for the 4 years of its life, but the concern comes back to, what if priorities change, or costs change, or events happen after we finish the first two projects, we don't have the ability to go off and raise
I
it.
think Jason just said it, this past winter changed
Oh, yeah.
what he was gonna do this year, so.
I think we need to support going forward with, here's our major project, the real, what
Well,
makes
that's
it
what this
340.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes it
basically.
340 or say $400,000 worth of effort, right? And then here are some other projects, if the voters are willing to give us the money, we can get these done this year too. And
Yep.
and go from there. I mean, it doesn't, that creates this tax thing going up and down like crazy again, but it feels like.
I just thought that we haven't really sat down with any realistic numbers on projects. We've talked about projects, we've had somewhat of estimates and so forth. This is kind of real. I mean,
This is awesome.
Frank brought up a point about, not being able to do drainage or whatever. There isn't any road on here other than maybe if you would change a catch basin, something to that nature. But there wouldn't be any overall changes because either they're sheet drained, which is Page Road is all sheet drained, there's no catch basins, period. We would never probably ever put them in because it drains into the fields in and around it. Nessenkeg has them, that's already done. Blue Jay has them, so does Albuquerque. Pilgrim has, they all have it. So, I mean, it's a good point because of other roads, you may have to do some. But these particular roads, that's not even an issue. But, yeah, there's other issues like on Page Road, I think in phase 3, the western phase of that needs to be dug up. It has to get a full dig. It's got to be all the way down. We got to find out why that's so mushy there. And then build it up a foot, get it up off the ground, and we'll be good, but there's no drainage there. But, in his point, yeah, he's right, he's 100% right. What the cost of that is, this is, in that Page Road, Phase 3 was $184,000, and that's not really very far from that curve at 99 up to Albuquerque. But it represents the full dig.
No, Jack, I think this is the type of information we would want from them as we build those project bundles.
Mhm.
Stuff like this, because this will help us understand it, but also help the public understand it.
Well, I hope that you'll put it somewhere on a website or something where people could actually see it and know what these things cost. I mean, they're outrageously priced.
Do we have this in electronic format?
I don't, but we can get this from Kevin
Yeah,
electronically.
if you can get it electronically, we can get it posted up there and just as, post it up and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about, just so people
Well, these are
understand.
projects that need to be done, period. I mean, I don't think we need to get into money or how much you're asking for, if you're asking for any. But they do have to know and be aware, they ride them every day, they know.
Yeah.
The guy that rides Pilgrim, he knows that thing is bad.
And you're
But he
talking-
may not go down Page Road towards 3A. But somebody else is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
No, like I said, I think packages like this and then packaging them in bundles that make sense to put in warrants, freestanding warrants. It sounds like that's the direction we would be going. Information is good.
So can these maps be, put on the website electronically as well?
If it's an electronic.
I just think these are good visuals for
Yep.
people to see, you
Just
know what I
actually
mean?
see what's there, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, no, that helps, well, because I appreciate the feedback now, 'cause I'm trying to find some ways, you look at these numbers, most of these exceed 170.
Right.
So breaking it into neat little 170 parcels was gonna be a little tricky.
No, I
Okay, that's
think
fine.
you take the first 170, plus what the 170 people gave us, and kind of make one bundle out of it, the 170 coming out of it from the block grant, and say, this is our big project. It's $400,000 in total, and, you know, maybe that's not the right number, but, you know, pick two big or, you know, projects you identified.
I mean, we got a lot of paving done this year for 3
You have.
I mean,
You have,
Well, it's June, and this, you know, you were done in June, and, you know, middle of July, you got a whole month of August and September, you could do more road work, but we don't have the funding to do it, and it's clear the roads are falling apart, and, you know, the roads that we haven't been
trying
able
to
to
put
get
them
to.
back together, but what can you do?
Well, all the roads that you have put back together are looking great. And,
Yeah,
you know,
they're holding up, but that's because we
Very good.
reclaimed them, didn't screw around, just throw cover over them and make them black. You know, we really put them back together right. Okay, you want to go to the other one?
Yeah, let's talk about the Route 102 intersection study.
This is pretty simple. I just-
I'm assuming there's no more questions on the road improvement stuff.
This is just a map of Litchfield showing you the exits in yellow of how you can get in and out of
just to see this, because I know there's a lot.
it. At least you haven't had time to look at it. So
There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 5.
But you're in London there, you're one of them.
Yeah.
You can pass it on to us.
Yep.
All right. Just to get you a little bit, the estimates that you have, if you look on page 2, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. In talking with Kevin today, I said, Kevin, I wouldn't want to go into the map, you'll see what we're talking about in phases. You know, phase 1 would be the one going out to 102. Phase 2 is back from Fernwood all the way back to Duchamp's Well. And then the other section is from Page Road up. But that's the new section of Albuquerque in orange.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You would come out there, we would pick up phase 2, go up to phase 1, and then out. We looked at a lot of different places in a lot of different ways, and this is about the best we could come up with. We would have had to build a road all the way across, right up to 7-Eleven or somewhere near there. It was absolutely ridiculous. But there's everything, in the numbers you look at, construction estimates, that's all 3 phases. In phase 1, it's around 750 to 900. All permits, the coring for a light, all the permits, wetland permit, every permit you can think of is in that number. We can't break it down because we don't really know what it would take if we need to take land or any of that. We didn't do a study, but a study was done not too long ago by NRCP, right?
NRPC,
Yeah, they did.
At Page
Yeah,
Road?
they have traffic counts in several of
That's what
those
I mean,
neighborhoods
on,
out there.
the
so.
traffic counts.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you could read this over and give me a little feedback, if you like the idea, or should we pursue it, which is, it's gonna be your call.
I mean, the idea of this study was to bring something back to the voters
Yeah,
this next year, in March, to approve whatever we decide is the appropriate plan.
well, the article actually called for us to bring back a study and numbers for the study. So that's kind of why what has ended up happening is, since March, we've been looking at a bunch of scenarios and said, okay, this, in our mind, if you were going to build something, this is the only thing that we would recommend building as probably the least intrusive thing to build. That said, you may ultimately still not want to build it. So in order to satisfy the request of the article, what we got here is this, on the second page, the design and permitting expenses. So we would actually see, this is what it would cost us to be design, build, ready on this. And then ballpark costs on the beginning of page 3 as to what would this work actually look like, in terms of construction costs.
So,
And I guess, although Kevin's labeled them phase 1, 2, and 3, we may actually want to think about the timing,
We talked about today.
all sorts of different ways on
Yeah.
timing. But again, thinking of it in phases for a reason. I mean, you build Albuquerque in phases. So the theory here would be to chip away at that in phase. If you go back to the first part of Jack's discussion, we know we have to do some work on Cutler anyway. So, when you're looking at that work, and if you're going forward, will influence phase 2 in some way. Phase 3 has been on the books since the
Forever.
design of Albuquerque.
Right.
I think its original design, then it kind of cut down to 3A instead. And, phase 1 is going to be the most challenging, because it's all new construction, it involves the signal, it is land that is not owned by the town, is owned by the state, so you're looking at a longer time horizon on that
this
one.
was the old circumventual highway.
Yeah.
plan, right?
Right. So,
Not that it makes it easier to get, but.
no, but you're not gonna tackle this all
So
at
are we
once.
going, so in March of next year, we're gonna go forward with, here's the results of the study, and for us to actually design it and estimate it correctly, we're looking at $180,000 that we're asking the voters to raise.
If you wanna do the whole thing soup to nuts.
Well, I think you need to design the whole thing soup to nuts, whether you build it soup to nuts is probably.
Well,
the question.
and again, that's, do you design it all soup to nuts? Do you say, look, we know it's gonna be 180 to do the whole thing, we'd like to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and break it up and
Yeah, but-
ask for certain
So
parts of it
you
year
do
over year?
phase- You do phase 1, and then phase 2 and phase 3 don't get approval, what's the point of phase 1? There's no reason for it at that point. You know what I mean?
Right, well, I mean, you need to think about which phase, and I guess that's where,
I mean, ultimately, if you were able to do phase 1 and get phase 1, that would improve, access out of Cutler Road, because that intersection's a pain in the neck to begin with.
Mhm.
Plus that tight corner and stuff, but, okay. I'm just trying to understand what we're supposed to go to the voters with. Have we done enough work to meet the requirement of the warrant that was approved? And now that we go, with the ask of, it sounds like we have, at least it feels like we have to me, but.
Yeah, we've done what the article has requested. Now, the next question is, okay, which of these numbers do you take forward? Or, I mean, and alternatively, you could also back up a step and say, well, you guys say that this is the one best route. We disagree, go back and hire an engineer for $20,000 to study all the routes and give us
Yeah.
an analytical, I mean, we
Have those in my drawer.
we shortcut part of this because we did some of the study, so we're trying to get you to the what if you actually want to build this cost.
Anybody else got any questions or thoughts? Or anybody next? Okay.
My personal opinion would be to, I think the board needs to decide if it wants to go forward with some response to the voters, what that response should be. In other words, one of the responses, or possible responses, could be, well, it's not feasible to do it, and the project has no merits. The other response could be, yeah, we can do it, and here's the various proposals. And the last response could be, yeah, here's what we would see as phasing to this. Here's how we would recommend this be approached. I do believe that if you're going to engineer it, you need to engineer the whole thing, because if you engineer phase 1 and then find out that phase 2 or phase 3 is not feasible,
Right.
you just sunk money in for no good purpose.
Right.
So you should engineer the whole thing, probably permit the whole thing, and then go forward to the voters with some means of doing this in some logical fashion.
Do we wanna make, I don't think we wanna make a decision tonight on that. I'd probably prefer to have the whole board here to decide.
I table it until the rest of the board.
I think that you're right, I think I agree with you that design and permitting should all be done as one thing. And that's what gets presented to the voters at some point, after they approve it.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, you have this.
Yep.
Read through, digest it, I mean, the action, realistically, the next action is gonna be some sort of warrant article, so we don't need to decide immediately, there will be something related to this on our list of warrant articles, and then we can scale up, you can scale up, down, across, I'll throw something to get the conversation started.
Well, I mean, let's make sure that these two specific things, the 2015 road projects and this, are up front of the budget process, not when we're trying to decide the 25 warrant articles. Let's have the conversation up front, so it can factor into our budget.
Yep.
So, September timeframe, let's make sure it's back on the agenda to do that.
That's fine.
And at that point, if you have new numbers or road conditions have changed and we wanna modify the plans, I think the ask really, like I said, is, especially from the road improvement side, is come back with some more, bundling of projects that can freestand themselves, and then go that way, versus the bond that we talked.
That's fine,
Okay.
that was part of the input, sooner rather than later on that list of how do you want us to break up the. These are all big numbers, and realistically, we're not gonna be asking for all of these pieces, so figuring out what do you think is.
And I know Jack
the
has those
tolerance.
inventories, and has the estimated costs and the footage and all that stuff, the linear foots, so he knows what a lot of those roads cost, so the data's available to us.
What I've always done is taken the biggest project I have, spend that money, take it right out of the budget,
Right.
and then divvy it out to other areas that are in need. We ended up doing it into the middle school this year because that wasn't the plan to do that. The plan was to get Stark done. But because of a caved-in catch basin and other things, it was necessary to do it. We can't have school buses running over holes.
Exactly.
So that road had to be done. And I caught a lot of baloney over not doing the completion of Stark from some residents there, and I understand why. But they also did eventually understand that the safety of the children is priority. so.
I think when people have the full picture, they understand.
Yeah,
what we're doing.
exactly, and that's what it was. They didn't really know, so.
So
it
Jack,
worked
before you leave, is there anything else we can do for you?
Nope, all set.
Okay.
Going well.
Welcome back from vacation.
Welcome back, and
I need it. I needed it.
you've been doing a great job, so.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Frank.
I do have one thing I'd like to hear the thoughts of the road agent on.
Sure.
I love it when you smile at me like that.
Hold on, it's gonna be rough.
No, it's not gonna be rough at all. There is, in the folders for informational items, an article called Transportation Alternative Program. And the Transportation Alternative Program is the same program that paid for the bike path. So if people think back to that, the bike path
I've
was.
been reading that online.
Yeah, the bike path was paid for by basically it's alternative transportation, but the cost, I think, was 20% to the town, don't quote me on the number, but 20% to the
That's what it
town, and
was.
80% by whatever. There is a request apparently for additional grants on that, and I'm wondering if there's any projects that would make sense to go forward on that. I do know for a while there was discussions on,
Minecraft.
Sidewalks, alternative means to access the bike path, that type of stuff. So I was interested in understanding if you as road agent had any ideas in terms of should the town be applying for some grants along that line, or?
I've been reading that. I haven't gotten all the way through it all yet, but I read some of it today.
It came out last week, so.
Yeah.
From the.
Yeah, I actually got an email about it.
The only point I wanted to bring up is there's a drop dead date in here, which is August 6th, which is submitting a letter of interest for funding, which I guess is not that difficult, but I guess that would be a drop dead point that we would have to
We can get a letter out.
But yeah, if we can identify a project, because that letter is not binding.
We have talked about doing something on Page Road where from Hildred up to Albuquerque is a section I would like to see done, and it would then connect all the schools into that bike path. We put a warrant article out.
Middle school ain't connected, right?
Pardon?
The middle school's not
Oh,
connected.
yeah, it is.
It is? How's it connected?
Goes all the way down McGowan to the school.
Yeah, I think you're talking about Pinecrest,
Oh, yeah,
from
Pinecrest.
McGowan, Pinecrest all the way up to Albuquerque is what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh,
From
okay,
Hildred
okay. Yeah.
up
Yeah.
to the bike path.
Right.
All the rest of that is already interconnected
Yeah.
with Griffin, the
Yeah.
middle school, up to Hildred. And then from Hildred up, there's nothing.
Did we ever,
Okay.
do?
I don't know if we put a warrant article together.
No, I don't think we ever did, but did we ever find out how much it would cost us to do that?
No.
Well, wait,
It has
wait,
to be
hold on a
surveyed.
minute, though. Didn't we put a warrant article out for that, that had a price tag attached to it, and then it died a painful
Yeah,
death?
Bill
because
Spencer
we-
put
Because
a-
we said it had a price tag attached of
Yeah, 800,000.
$800,000. I think that did go all the way to the ballot. I want to say 11, maybe, 2011.
Yeah, you're right. I remember Bill changed it at deliberative. It was like, we didn't have a price, and he put a price on it.
Yeah. So,
Like 800,000, something like that.
Mhm.
And it's nowhere near that.
Yep, it was Article 6. Article 6, Pinecrest sidewalk.
What's the number?
I think was it for engineering?
I'm opening it up right now. This is from the ballot.
I know it was a pretty good chunk of change.
Based on what I'm seeing, I think our internet just went down.
well, that'll make it fun for the rest of the meeting.
No kidding. Oh, there it goes.
Good.
Article 6 was, the article's approved, the future request is construct, oh yeah, money, preliminary engineering of sidewalk. Okay, the schools. It was $300,000 just for the engineering, it looked like. This would connect, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Pinecrest Road between Hildreth and Albuquerque, this would connect all schools. If the article's approved, a future request may be made for construction fund. Sidewalk is around $300,000. That's the estimated cost was $300,000.
Yeah, because wasn't the engineering like 30,000 or 20,000 or
Yeah,
something?
that was the explanation for the warrant, and then you gotta look at the actual warrant, so. The warrant, the engineering was $12,500,
Okay.
and with an estimated cost of $300,000 to actually build the sidewalk out.
That was
Hmm?
I won't say anything.
Yeah, I'm just reading the warrant.
Okay.
So, my note on that, for what it's worth, too, is that if we leverage the balance of what we have in the bike path fund as our 20% match. So if we're looking at a project that's basically extending the bike path, we have funds available in the bike path fund that you see when you look at our regular funds. What we have in hand there is about 62,000. So that as a 20% would cover about a $300,000 project.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Now, the other side of the coin is that, excuse me, eligible activities include the construction, planning, and design of on-road, off-road trail facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, et cetera. So you could use that potential grant for just the planning purposes, rather than doing anything in terms of trying to propose something for construction either.
Well, and you could actually, yeah, I mean, you could actually do some sort of design that looks at the network effect to say, is this the best place to extend it? We think it is.
You gotta remember that you have to build, if you're getting that money from them, you have to build it to their specs, so, like the one from Hildred into the middle school, or from Hildred down to McGowan is not within the standard of the bike path.
Mm-hmm.
The width isn't the same, that type of thing, so you might run into, might run into a problem there where if you're trying to, marry the two, that could be an issue. So that means that we'd have to go all the way down to the curve on Pinecrest.
We also got to create a crosswalk too, which we'd have to do anyway.
You know, that,
Well, you have about 6 of them there
Yeah.
going up.
You would.
that said, if we look at the scoring process that happens both regionally and the state for this, the advantage we bring to this is this bike path has a great reputation in the transportation planning circles that are out there. It is regular because
It's been copied by a lot.
because of the way it's designed, the way it's set up, the high level of use, so it's a popular project. What that means for us is we are more credible applying for an extension for it because of its success, so.
Well, I guess it sounds like letter of intent needs to get written.
Don't hurt.
Give it a shot.
Okay, anything else for the road agent?
Nope.
Cool. Thanks, Jack.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank
Safe
you
drive.
all.
Now, was that painful?
All right, seeing that it's 6:45, I'm gonna open the floor for public input. Is there anybody from the public like to speak to the board or the community? Welcome. Just state your name and
you.
address.
Sure. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name's Robin Dunphy, and my address is 72 Independence Lane, Manchester. All set? I just wanted to briefly introduce myself to all of you. I have a bachelor's degree and work experience in accounting and finance. I also have a master's degree in education and experience in special education as a teacher and case manager. I have had this lucky guy, same husband for 22 years. God bless him. And we have 2 sons, 18 and 20. Last January, I was sworn into the Board of School Committee, where I won a seat in Manchester. And now I'm taking on running for state senate here in District 18. So I
have
wanted to
stop
say
you-
hello.
I need to stop you there. Well, thank you for coming.
I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself.
Yeah, it's been a practice not to allow candidates to address the public at this forum, so.
Oh, okay.
I didn't recognize you, so I apologize for letting you, approach, but welcome and good luck.
Like I said, I just wanted to say hello to everybody, and that was all, okay?
Good luck.
All right,
So if
thank
you see me around,
No, you
don't
are.
close the door. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oops. And I lost my shoe.
Have a good night.
No.
Hi, Chris.
I guess.
Do I need to introduce myself?
Chris Pascucci. Yes, we
Off
had.
Colonial Drive, thank
Oh,
you.
there you go.
I wasn't around during the last meeting, but I watched it on the, something, rerun a computer or something. Just a couple points. I wrote them down so I don't take up too much time. One point I want to clarify or correct. You guys were talking about the NHMA, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and Mr. Lemire was very adamant, matter of fact, when he says that organization, which he is on the board of directors of, will only take calls or questions from selectmen. He said he spoke with one of the attorneys there, and they confirmed that. I'm just here to say that is false, that is wrong, that is not accurate. The website of the NHMA says they are open to all elected and even appointed. I only thought it was all elected people of member towns, but it's also appointed. So I guess moving forward, I think it's a great organization. We pay over $6,000 or somewhere around there a year. So it's not, I don't see any loss. I don't see what anybody should be afraid of if elected or appointed members had a question. You guys did make a resolution, which is okay, to say responses need to go through the department head, so everybody's on the same page. That seems fair enough. That's common sense. But unless they change their bylaws or their mission statement, right now I would encourage all elected and appointed people to utilize what we're paying for. Next, we have, you guys have a wage plan. It's a selectmen-approved wage plan, not approved by the voters or the taxpayers of the town, the people who are here to pay for it. Because it's not voter-approved, you actually have a wage plan, a pay increase with no money to fund it. That's not fair to either the employees or the taxpayers of the town. I'm not here to talk about the wage plan or whether, it's a good idea or not. I'm talking about the fact that it's not voter-approved, which means it's not fair now because you have no money. There's a number of ways to solve this issue. Since you can't put the money into the upcoming default budget, you have to add it into the proposed budget and hope it passes. If the proposed budget doesn't pass, as the proposed budget didn't for the past 2 years, again, you will have no money to fund this wage increase. And the employees will have to go another year without this new plan in effect, or the plan's in effect, but they can't get anything out of it. That's unfair to all parties. You can go about it another way. You can create a warrant article and ask the voters to approve the plan. That's the only way to guarantee funding for this, and it's the fairest both to the taxpayers and the employees of the town. Because tonight, I know it's on your agenda, and I'm hoping that's what you're gonna talk about, putting it on a warrant. That's what Mr. Perry during candidates night, as a matter of fact, everybody in that stage stood up when they answered the question. They said all new raises should go on a warrant, and the voters should be asked, as opposed to just making it, 5 members of a board. Because it doesn't make sense to scramble around and figure out how to get money for this. I think if you inform the voters clearly are very fair when you ask them things. This makes sense, and then you can guarantee funding instead of trying to take it from different lines or trying to finagle something. You guys claim, we all claim, we want to be more inclusive. We want to inform the voters. We want to bring the voters into the process. This is the perfect opportunity. Finally, I've come to this board before, usually asking for things like control on spending or accountability in government or process of the way we go about things. And even if there's 1 or 2 other people behind me saying the same thing, the response I many times get from this board, I hear it's only a handful of people asking for this, that there's not enough people for you guys to kind of move forward with certain things. Leads me to believe, or led me to believe, that you needed a bunch of people to say something in order to make a move or take something seriously. At least that's what I believed until the last meeting, because one community member came here last meeting to complain about fireworks on July 4th. And you guys, as soon as that complaint, you guys are ready to ban fireworks in the whole town. I was shocked when I heard that, but I have a few questions. How do you intend on enforcing this ban? Example, next July 4th, 9 o'clock at night, if 78 families in Litchfield all around the town decide to light off Roman candles, there's 2 cops on a shift. What are you going to do? How much money do we have budgeted to educate, inform the community on this new law, new ban? You're going to take out ads in newspapers, send mailers to the home. What about adding to the budget for additional police force, additional detective work to investigate, to go to court? To me, this seems like a feel-good piece of legislation, a ban that's a big waste of time and resources. We all know if you implemented this ban, there's nothing our police force can do to actually stop fireworks from being set off. It's not a knock on a police force. It's just that you will be adding an undue burden on them without being able to afford the resources to back it up. I certainly feel for that resident, or maybe a handful of other residents that are bothered by the fireworks, but everybody that moved to this town knew fireworks were legal. I understand there's 18 communities. If that's a big difference, people move to towns for certain reasons. And it's only a couple nights a year, really. You're not going to have this problem again until next July. Banning this, although you're allowed to, in my opinion, is an overreach from elected people, politicians that believe they actually know better and try and protect us from every little thing out there. As of today, you had 1 person sit here asking for fireworks banning and 1 person, myself, asking for no ban. So now it's equal. I understand you're going to have a forum. I don't know how you're going to advertise it. To me, go ahead, do it, but please don't take any action based on this little community thing, because you know how these things work. The only people that know about what's going on right now are a handful that want it banned, and they're going to tell their friends, come and tell the selectmen they want fireworks banned. And guys like quite honestly, I don't even like fireworks. It is loud, it's annoying, but I believe in freedom and liberty, and I don't think you guys should be taking that away. If you want it taken away, it should go on a warrant. You should inform the public and ask them if they want it, but it has to be on election day, not just something done in this room. Now, if you decide to move forward with this is the last thing I'm going to say on it, because I know when I leave here, you could just ban these things today. But I want to make a formal request. Loud outdoor parties after 9 p.m. every night of the week in the spring, summer, and fall when windows are open. That's very disturbing to a lot of people. We could talk about the decibel limit. We could purchase decibel meters for the enforcement. Use of power tools like lawn mowers and weed whackers before 9 a.m. on weekdays and 11 a.m. on weekends. People like to sleep late. Again, very loud and annoying. Loud motorcycle exhaust. That happens around town. You hear them. Ban those permanently. Dogs that bark for more than 15 consecutive minutes. And we need a ban on the gunfire from the outdoor shooting range, which you hear in the part of town, and plus during hunting season, because that is as loud as fireworks, and that could upset people just as much as fireworks going off. I know you might think of that and say that's silly, and I'm being a wise guy, but you know, to me, it's just as silly as you guys considering a ban on fireworks. Bring it to the voters, or bring it up to the State House, let our rep know, make it a law in New Hampshire to ban fireworks if we're going to do that. But please, please don't just unilaterally ban fireworks. A lot of people hate them, but a lot of people like their liberty more, and they know we're getting tired of politicians banning things one after another because one or two or maybe three people get upset about it. The average person is sitting at home saying, "No, they can't really ban that." They're not paying attention until they light the fireworks, and then somebody comes to the house and say that's illegal. Doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I'm going to close public input at 6:56. And just to clarify Mr. Pascucci's comments, the board has taken the action of having a public hearing to discuss the matter, has not made one indication of what they would do after that public hearing. And if it was to be a complete ban, the board had kind of telegraphed that they would bring it to the warrant, bring it to warrant. So this board has taken no other action at this point. All right, moving back onto the agenda, administrator report, new business, Conservation Commission land purchase.
Yes. Conservation Commission is negotiating for a purchase of a piece of land. There's a handshake agreement in place. The documents are moving back and forth, but there's no signed purchase and sale yet. So to that end, I'm sort of discussing, it's in the pipeline. I'm not discussing what land it is, the price being paid, all of those sort of things. They are allowed to purchase land subject to the approval of the local governing body. That's you. So if they, right now, they're holding their public hearing on August 7th regarding the use of the conservation fund for this purpose. And then if they proceed from their hearing with the intent to spend that money on the land purchase, then we double back here for your meeting on the 11th to, for them to seek your approval for the purchase, for that to go forward. So once that purchase and sale is signed, expect that I will be posting for your information the rest of the information about this property. Basically what's holding it up right now is just our council and their council are trying to get the final details on the agreement put together.
Question?
I know the answer to this. Do they have a property appraisal from a certified appraiser?
No, they do not.
I don't think that I can buy off on purchasing property until we have some type of appraisal on its worth and be able to understand if the purchase price matches up with what they have.
Okay, I will share that with them. I will share that their concern was there have not been equivalent sales the past few years, so a property appraisal was going to be at best a mathematical inference that you would be paying somebody a couple $1,000s to make that mathematical guess. because unlike when you get a property appraisal for residential property, you have comparable sales, you can kind of get in the ballpark. That said, if it's the board's preference to see a property appraisal, I will pass that to the Conservation Commission.
Okay, anything else?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen request a property appraisal on the value of the property before bringing it to the board.
Okay, do I have a second? Do I have a second? Motion fails, a lack of a second. Anything else?
That's all I have on that one.
Next is other funds.
Other funds, a question came up last week. As we send out reports, we have a number of funds that exist outside of our general operating budget. That, in some cases, you've been carrying on the books for a number of years. I put together a quick chart showing some of those funds and notes where they were relevant. The balances shown are the June end cash balances, and I point that out because detail funds, for instance, have money in transit between payments and receivables. Those two funds, the police and fire detail, it's also notable that those are largely intended to be self-clearing. That is, we reimburse full charges for administration vehicle, all associated wage and benefit costs. However, in the past, not all those costs were being reimbursed. So balances build up that were kind of standing balances in those funds. What we have been gradually doing is working down those standing balances so they're getting closer to self-clearing. You may recall a couple of years ago, that's how we acquired the computers for the detail vehicles, police department. I am hoping that as we, our union contract this year had another incentive that was based out of the detail fund. So once I sort of see the tracking on that, I'll have a better feel for what the standing balance in that fund is. I think when Chief and I were talking about the vehicle issues that the department was having, one of the things we mentioned, again, not at a proposal, but said, one of the things that he and I are looking at is whether we can take a totally different approach to replacing the detail vehicles and perhaps fund them out of the trailing balances in the detail fund. So, that said, some of the other funds that we're carrying right now, we carry two cable funds, cable equipment and cable revolving. The fund called equipment was the equipment grant received from Comcast, received with the signing of the franchise agreement. That's not replenished. The revolving fund is the one that is replenished. That's where you see the quarterly money coming in from the franchise fee, and that's where we pay operating bills out of for them. Conservation has two smaller funds and then the large, what has been called the Conservation Land Fund, and that was the one this year at town meeting that we voted to encompass all of the purposes under RSA 36A for. I referenced the bike path fund earlier. We have the water district reimbursement that's pending public hearing and appropriation purpose, so that will ultimately be committed somewhere. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of these
I don't think
unless
you need to. I know,
want it. If
I
you
know
have
Frank,
questions,
I know Frank had questions
yeah.
about it. I had a couple questions about it. I mean, does that answer the questions you had, Frank?
No, I wanted specific questions answered.
Okay.
Which was the reason I brought it up. And that is, we've got to get rid of some of these funds. Some of these funds have been here since God created the earth. And it just doesn't make any sense. I'll give you an example. The footbridge fund has been in place since at least the early 90s to replace a footbridge that got washed out down there or something like
I
that.
thought someone did replace it, though. Didn't someone repair it?
I have no idea, but we're still carrying $17,285.03 in the fund, and we ought to either roll the fund into general fund or do something with it, or I don't care what, but we should get rid of it. The same type of thing, fire pond, you know. That was a fund that was established by the fire chief to establish fire ponds around the town. Now that we have the water for the most part, we really don't, I'm not sure, maybe, Selectman Bork can comment on this, how often we use ponds.
Very seldom.
No one
yeah.
wants to draft,
Yeah,
that's a
no,
pain.
no.
Drafting is a
don't.
real pain.
And so,
I've been on.
I guess that, and the other thing I wanted to find out is, are we using any of the police detail funds for maintenance on these vehicles that we're sending on detail? And I don't know the answer to that. Same thing with fire details. Are we using that for, equipment needed for the details or for maintenance of the equipment needed?
Yes. And the note I have is we bring the admin charges back as general fund revenue. We
Yep.
bring in vehicle reimbursements back into the department bottom line. So when you look at your police department weekly
It's that
report,
bottom line, yeah.
it's that, there's a negative account there. It should be the 01-4210-10-910.
Mhm.
That's where we bring vehicle charges back. That's how we offset it. We throw it all into the general department bucket. So that covers all vehicles. We don't charge out.
So the police special detail fund of $17,500 is all dedicated monies that will go out to the offices? If we were to stop details immediately, it would go out to the offices and clear?
No,
Not all of it.
no, that's what I tried to explain when I talked about it,
I know.
is it's supposed to be self-clearing, it's not yet.
So how are we gonna get there?
How are we,
That's
go-
what I wanna know.
how are we gonna get there? Once we see what the impact of what we bring in, and if we are truly offsetting the 457B match that we put into this year's contract, because remember, we're paying that out of detail fund. The scenario is that it's self-funding by raising the admin charge and the like. Once I get through and see how that plays out for the season, I'll have a trailing number there. Once I know what that trailing number is, then we'll have a recommendation on other items to deal with. You know, I've been, each year, probably since 11, I've been looking at spending it down a little bit to get it down to the self-clearing, because you went and
So,
for several years and never filled it.
what is the process to, if we determine a fund no longer required, what's the process for us to put it back in the general? Just make a motion to put it back in the general, or what is?
The reason many of these funds hang out there is every one of them has a different creation
Correct.
process. Some have been selectmen, some have been town meetings, some have strings, some don't have strings, some have been grants.
With the special detail fund, you may, I don't know the formation of the warrant article, but you may be able to take and move it in under the caveat that the selectmen are authorized to manage and expend the fund.
There's no need to monkey with the detail funds. They're set up fine, you cleaned them up a few years ago. There's.
I just got from you that we have some type of,
Right, because you had sloppy accounting in the 08, 09, 10 era. We're trying to figure out to move that back. The funds work fine, they're created fine, all of those.
I'm not proposing to get rid of the fund, that's
Right.
not what I'm saying. What I'm proposing is that we get the fund, that fund in particular, down to a level where it is a self-clearing fund.
Yep, I don't disagree.
So,
Okay, but the other funds, some of these funds, we have no need for, we've never touched in years.
Right, and that gets back to, okay, when you talk about the fire, for instance, fire pond, footbridge, industrial development, off-site improvements, I gotta go figure out where all those came from, if any of them are documented. And some of those are a vote of the board to close, some of them are a vote of town meeting to close. And the windfall you get from all of these is if you're not doing spending that meets the purpose of the creation of it, and you can't repurpose it, it all goes into the fund balance, and they just
So-
drop.
So I guess my point is, I'd like to see this board take an action where we get this thing resolved before the end of the year, so that we can either bring warrant articles forward to squash some of them that we don't need, and bring them into general fund, or we combine them, repurpose them, or do something with them, because they're just hanging out here looking pretty.
Yeah, so it sounds like we gotta figure out which ones are board action versus warrant action. Like, I was like, I had a question around like 275th. I thought we've already did the pavilion, so why is the fund still there?
Exactly.
I mean, it's 2166.
That was one that caught my
I think,
eye.
unfortunately, I think it was a lot of the work was donated, which is probably.
Right, and so there's still trailing money there for that. I mean, some of those you would keep, like in that one, I'd say you'd keep it because you're gonna need to fix something, you may add something, it's $2,000.
What about like the fire detail? There's $18,000, almost $19,000 in there. Could we have gotten that car, the truck that we needed, using that fund? Because what else do they do with the money?
The difficulty is that it should really be detail related.
And having
And
another,
the-
having another truck around that's not a fire, if it's a $100,000 truck running around, probably a lot better than doing that, but. I'm just wondering what the $18,000 is netted
Right.
to. In the police department, it makes sense, because there's cars that go out, there's breakages,
Right.
there's a lot more coverage, there's a lot of detail work.
I don't
so-
see how the fire department could possibly spend
Every
a lot of
once,
money
like in a-
out of that fund.
Every once in a great while, there may be a fire watch because the system goes down in
Yeah.
a school or something like that, but
So
it's
my,
not,
But that would also be.
it's a big number.
that would also
I
be-
agree with you. I don't think I'll agree with Jason. I don't think it should be eliminated, but I don't know if we need that amount of money in that neither.
no, I don't want you to think I'm proposing to eliminate in particular the detail funds,
Yeah.
the police and fire. That's not what I'm
The
proposing.
amendment.
I just think we gotta get the budget of those numbers under control. I don't see a purpose for the fire special detail fund. I would probably suggest that if there's some thinking that we need to get a car or some vehicle to replace the one that crashed and burned, and I don't mean that literally, I
Yep.
mean figuratively, then perhaps that money can be repurposed to that in the upcoming elections.
Or what's the guidelines around the detail fund? Can it be used to
It-
purchase something like that?
The guidance should be, and this is, the conversation I had with the auditors with, hey, how do I get rid of this trailing money? Are we gonna go back and allocate it for all of the years, because it's basically owed to general fund? And they said, preference would be, use it for things that you are reasonably detail related. So, police, that's been easy. Fire, I've struggled a little bit, because a vehicle that is largely sending people to training, I can't really say is detail related. The other thought on all of these is, and I've kicked this around as we've changed the intensity. There was a point when we had a lot of fire detail. We have much less fire detail these days based on some changes that businesses have made. So, one of the easiest things to do is you have a public safety detail fund. I would not recommend getting rid of a detail fund. That's a very specific
Right.
creation for a very specific reason. However, if you lump them together, you'd have something.
Is the Mel's detail paid out of this fund?
That's where it would have come out of, right?
Yeah, on fire. Yeah,
On
for
the
fire,
fire
it
end
is.
of it?
Yeah, it is. So I mean, we have it. It's just, again, it's figuring out the right way to apply the fire balance.
Okay.
So, all right. I mean, we'll start chipping away at some of these.
That's my only concern.
It sounds like you gotta figure out what.
It is.
What we gotta do.
And I guess the short answer is, if it was easy, it would be done. Some of these are going to be fairly time consuming to chip away at. So
You're here 8 hours a day, what's the problem?
I won't call you tomorrow, how's that? You'll be done by the end of the day tomorrow.
Yeah, and I won't call you neither, because
No.
I'll be someplace.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions
Okay.
about the other funds, about the funds? Old business, 2015 budget target.
2015 budget target. All right. So, couple things here. I've been doing my first pass on a default. I've actually done my first pass on a operating budget, sort of my first wave of numbers before I send stuff out to department heads to get them to add in what I'm missing and what their priorities are as well. And based on some of what we've done, if you recall, the past couple of years, we've spent an inordinate amount of time in great detail. We'll march through hours and hours of process, and then following a defeat of the budget at annual meeting, department heads and I have cobbled together our set of recommendations to meet a target number in a week and gotten back to you guys and go over the salient points. So I guess what I'm looking at this year is I'm looking for a target number. Ideally, this board gives me a number and says, go back, work with your colleagues to give us a budget, show us what we get for this number, tell us what the outliers are, and then you have a conversation about, okay, yes, we need police cruisers, and we can, reduce all of the paper clips we want, but we're not gonna find $80,000 worth of paper clips. So that's question one I have, is I'm looking for some sort of target, if you're able to set that, knowing that you're going to add stuff potentially on if it doesn't fit in there, but that narrows our conversation. Second thing then is scheduling. Past couple of years we've done a Saturday session, and we've marched everybody through and tried to get through, and if we're going to start doing that, get everyone in here approach, I need to start setting up some schedules for that, and see if a Saturday, what Saturday, and all of that works.
How soon? Well,
September. If you're gonna do it, my recommendation would be September 13th. We did it the second Saturday in September last year. If you need to do it, that's what I suggest doing. Alternatively, if you wanna take a whole different approach, I'm open to suggestion.
well, I personally like the Saturday workshop, just because it got a lot of it out of the way. It's one day, we can get through all the major departments, and I'll fund lunch again.
My personal opinion is that I think what we should do is to take the existing budget number, the default budget that we have already established, and ask Jason to work with the department heads in that, fitting their budgets into those numbers. And that we should then also ask that anything that doesn't fit in be identified so that we can consider whether it makes sense to adjust accordingly one way or the other. And I would have personally no problem going forward with proposing that we flatline the budget, bring it forward. Again, provided that there's the bumps that we consider in there that need to be looked at. And then bring that forward to the budget committee. I'm not seeing that we need to bring all of the department heads in to go over that if it fits.
Oh, sure, I mean, there may be departments we don't need to see that day, but I think we're gonna wanna talk to the police, we're gonna wanna talk to fire, because there's gonna be some major expenditures there. So I'm suggesting that Saturday we use for the departments we need to talk to. It's not all of them, it's whoever we think is the priority. And are you saying, when you say flatline, are you taking the default number he's calculated?
I'm saying that we
Moving
take the
forward?
default number that we're currently living under and use that as a starting basis and go forward from there, identifying anything that doesn't fit within that budget.
See, I would actually say use his calculated default number for the 2015, not the one we're living under now, but yeah, okay.
In the grand scheme of things,
It's
there's.
$60,000.
I'm not gonna, if you pick a number, we'll make it work. I mean, if you pick this year's number, I'll tell you, one item I'm gonna ask you to put in is the cost of the union contract pre-approved. So I'm gonna, and what that actually helps me do, I mean, to be fair, that actually helps me isolate that number,
Well, doesn't,
What I just said would
Yep.
consider that.
right, exactly. But, and that also helps later on in the conversation.
but isn't that calculated in your 2015 budget? So,
It is, but if you take, Frank's suggestion is take 2014's.
What he's saying
Number.
is he would just add it to Frank's.
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, but I thought the cost of the contract almost equals that. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, there are, year two is not that high. And with some other changes, you win some, you lose some when you do the default budget, so. Some go up, some go down. But,
Well,
to me,
I
that
mean,
would
here's
be
the thing,
a
so
freestanding item.
I'm fine with, I'm fine with Frank's suggestion to go with the $5,007,000 as the starting base. Factor in the cost of the union contract and the cruisers, because we've been told by the budget committee it should go into the budget.
Well, the vote didn't go through.
They're telegraphing that at this point, but they don't want it, so factor that into the number, that's our starting number, because that's a known thing right now. To me, the cost of the car and.
All I'm saying is start with the number, construct the budget with the departments on that, and then go through and show us what you've added in or subtracted out, as the case may be, so that we know what the changes, relatively speaking, are, and then we just go forward from there.
Okay, I think that's fine, I think it works out well.
And so you're basically then okay with the conversation that I have with departments is not we're not doing the line by line, these are the components of every line. It's going to be, these are the outliers, okay, hey, and if I had a department that has no major changes, nothing's happening, you may not see them.
That's
But
fine.
you may have for instance, you may not see Dave Mellon unless Dave has something dramatically different.
Dave will be happy with that.
And yeah, Dave will be thrilled, Chief O'Brien will probably be here because, he needs some vehicles.
And I
And,
expect Jack to be here.
Jack, Jack will be here, but interestingly, the other thing that we're gonna have to weigh is some of these are gonna be articles. Because
that's my point.
Jack's not gonna have a budget issue.
The operational issue, the day-to-day, that's well defined, and he's comfortable with you presenting it, but he's definitely gonna wanna come in and talk about the warrants that we want to discuss around his budget, so.
I'm not talking about warrants.
No, I-
Warrants are a separate side issue.
But as I said earlier, if we're gonna have that workshop, we should address these two big warrants as part of the discussion, that's all. Because I'd like to see those up in the front. The highway.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
That's
that.
all,
I'm
yeah.
just talking the budget, that's all I'm
Yeah, yeah.
talking.
Well, I'm gonna say, since if we truly compress, not walking through every line of the budget and, then having that conversation with the department head could be both. It'll be the operating budget. You may choose to punt some things out to warrant articles, and there may be some that we're gonna come in saying, look, I'm not looking for this in the budget, but since you're here, let's talk about a warrant article. It goes on the list. Be more efficient for everybody since they're here. Okay.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say about whether the department head comes in front of us or not, I would definitely leave it up to the department if they wanna come.
Oh, yeah,
So you have
that's,
some that may, if they wanna be here during the discussion to be able to answer technical questions or just to hear the questions that they should be aware when their date is. That's all I'm saying there.
well, contrary to misinformation over the years, no department head has ever been told,
I'm aware.
don't come
I'm
on budget
aware.
night. I realize
And
that.
well, I wasn't talking about the budget committee stuff.
No,
I'm
but
talking about the-
but even here, but that will.
But that said, I want to make sure one thing we all understand is, if a department head should not be proposing a budget line within their budget, okay, for spending, that they don't have backup to support why they're spending that money. Right?
Right, I mean, I guess what I would say is, that will be, if we're basically staying the course and there's nothing nuts going one way or the other, that should be kind of the filtering that I'll do. The big shifts and where we making major changes, I think will be the primary focus of our conversation here.
We're not proposing you changing your format where you provide our backup and how you came to those numbers. Those
No.
are all, this information we're all gonna still see and all that stuff.
Yeah, right, you're gonna see that, but I guess what I'm gonna ask is know that part of this conversation is the maneuvering the numbers around to get to that target. So I guess I'm asking I need a little trust back that we're not gonna be sitting here going through, you asked for 700 hours in office supplies and by September you've only spent 450. Can I make a motion to reduce that to 400?
There's no guarantees.
I'd go 3 1/4.
I'm not.
It's like the other way around where your backup is asking for a lot more, but you're asking for less in the line, and we're gonna, that kind of question, that's all. Because I think you're right, you're gonna back yourself into some numbers, try to live within that bottom line, which means you're gonna make some,
I'm gonna do a little.
if things were all good, this is what we would need, but we'll squeeze into this number, things will be tough and tight, but we'll get it to work like you always have.
And when you look at the adjustments we make in April, that's what we've done. Some of those numbers go a little high, some of those numbers go a little low, because I have experience behind me. And now, some of those numbers we've spent dead on, and others with the advantage of a few months under our belts, the numbers have gone a completely different direction. Okay.
So we're starting at $5,007,408, and you'll add in the things that we need.
Yeah, I'll figure out how to break it.
And we're talking about having, our major first kickoff workshop, get as much done as we can on September 13th.
Mhm.
Okay.
And unless a department has a boatload of crises, my view on scheduling them is an hour,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
which hopefully is more than enough in most cases.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on this topic? We good? All right, gasoline pricing. Now, I'm just gonna ask, I think we can have the conversation, but I would ask the board not to make any decisions or direction changes until we have a full board. I just
That's
think, Steve Perry has indicated a lot of interest in the topic in general.
Can I suggest, because there's a chunk of information that Chief O'Brien has been chasing, he's our primary contact with Burke Oil.
Yeah.
Can I suggest, we don't have that in hand from Burke yet?
I don't have a problem with that, but I do want to explain what I'm concerned about. We're paying $3-something-70 a gallon for oil, and I understand that that is, quote, state purchase. Here's my concern. Today, I purchased gasoline for $3.51 a gallon. Let's call it $3.50. Built into that $3.50 a gallon, there was 18 cents a gallon, which was the state tax, gasoline, or as legislatures like to call it, road toll. And the governor signed off on an additional 4-cent road toll while sitting in the middle of Route 93 southbound in Wyndham, New Hampshire. So that brings it up to 22 cents. Municipalities are exempt from paying road tax or road toll. So my question is, why are we paying $3.60 something, $3.70 something a gallon, when theoretically we should be knocking off 22 cents a gallon from $3.50, and it drops that should drop it all the way down to what, $3.32?
Sure.
Or $3.38? What is it? Pick the number,
I
don't know.
a number less than the current,
Right.
than what you see at the consumer price.
So I'm baffled for the life of me as to why we are paying that much,
And
when theoretically we should be
So-
getting it. We can send somebody to the store and get it cheaper.
Well, that's, okay, so I think, like you said, we need to have a discussion when everybody's here. I think I understand where Frank's coming from, we all had the same questions, that's how this sort of came up we were doing a manifest review, and we kind of,
Yeah.
what's this? And we sort of backed it. I know at that point, Jason took an action, trying to figure out so that when we decided to bring it forward, we would have some information. I think the challenge is that the prices, the dollar per gallon has all this embedded cost that's around the delivery and all that, and I think that's what we're trying to get, that's what Chief O'Brien is trying to get from the vendor we get today. There's not a lot of options around wholesale fuel delivery. That's another challenge. It's not like diesel and, kerosene oil. It's a lot of that you can get, but you can't get gasoline. I think there is a cost associated with the cars leaving town and getting fuel that has to be factored in this discussion. So, we'll have all that discussion like I said, I'd like to delay at least for Steve, because I know Steve raised the question a couple times. He raised it during the last review, and that's what prompted this to get put up again. And Frank has a valid point. I mean, if we're not supposed to be paying the tax, then why is it so high?
And that's the breakdown that I wanted to be able to get for you, is here's the Boston market price, here's the add-ons for all of this, and then you understand, okay, the numbers are what they are. You may then subsequently disagree with those numbers and feel that you have a different view about what's cost-effective, but I want to be able to assure you that the tax isn't there. And until I get that breakdown, I can't do that. So.
And if the tax isn't there, then the cost of delivery per gallon is huge.
So you figure gas stations are
And if
paying
this is a state
delivery
bid-
charges.
This is it. I mean, now that
Then
said,
our senators should be able to put something in that I could be a co-sponsor on.
I don't understand this, I don't understand the state, the bid price, because the state market price, which is is the regular street market price, right? That's what the tax and everything based into, that's what this number is right beside it?
That's
That's what I should be paying at the pump.
That's basically the street price average. What we tried to do is pull our weekly price with the state price, because in theory, all weeks we should be below with, but understanding, hey, the delivery's in there, so we may not always be below. And market, spot price in the market, we pay the day market price, where if you're down at Irving, they may have bought a few days ago, and,
I think that's a scam, no matter how you look at that.
When I'm sitting there
Regardless.
pumping
My gas, and the next thing I know, the pump's gone up 10 cents.
regardless.
I'm saying gas.
So,
But-
we'll look at it.
But you were also looking at prepaid.
I'm also looking at prepay. I'm also looking at what our prepay options are. We know how much gas we get. We get like 300 plus gallons a week.
So that's my concern. I won't take it any further, but
Okay.
That's fair.
it just doesn't make
Absolutely,
sense.
yeah.
Let's move this to the next meeting topic,
Yep.
and hopefully by then Chief will.
We'll have that, and we'll flesh out a few other pieces.
And like I
so.
said, there's another option. I mean, I'm personally not a proponent of having the cars leave the town.
Right.
We did it for all the right reasons. We gotta figure out why it's not looking cost effective. All right. Next, wage plan.
Wage plan. You guys discussed this at the last meeting, and then we're waiting for me. Now I only have three of you.
Yeah, let's
should
just-
we be kicking the can? You want I kick the can down the road on this one too?
I would.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right.
Wimps.
Water usage. Let's see. Oh, I think this came in end of the week.
Yes, this is a request that, it's not water usage, so you've got it mischaracterized. Originally, when we met with Don Ware, the VP of Pennachuck, one of the things that he asked about would be to participate in the future planning of Litchfield's growth, to be able to determine where they need to maybe increase line sizes, install new lines, or things like that, or what they can expect coming down the road. And one of the things that we had talked about was trying to form a group that could sit down with him and kind of go over some of this stuff. And I think Kevin was going to check with the planning board on that at the
Yeah, I
next
didn't
meeting.
make last meeting, so.
Okay. So I guess that's,
Okay.
we just need to come back around
We'll-
for Don Ware.
We'll put that further on. Okay. I got a couple other notes under. Just other items. Nick, in my absence, there was a question about biweekly payroll.
Yep.
And we had checked a couple years ago to gauge kind of, or at least a year and a half ago, gauge kind of what the interest was. There was not a lot of employee interest at making that shift, and a little bit of pushback at that point. Just some background is, we would probably gather about 2 hours, maybe 2 hours of paper processing. There's only about 10 to 15 paper checks generated each week. The remainder are direct deposit. No checks are mailed on a weekly basis, so there's no postage savings and a negligible material savings. Again, except for officials who receive quarterly checks, but that's sort of a side issue anyway. When we checked last time and sort of saw that there was little interest in pursuing that, we made some software changes here that sped up significantly the database processing time. We've updated some of the internally generated timesheets, particularly in police department. Lieutenant Donnelly has built a whole new timesheet package for officers to report through Google spreadsheets. That actually is working very well, giving them their reports, giving a hard copy to sign. That sped that process up. So, and we are now going to be implementing remote data entry for police and fire, which are the more complex data entry we have into the system. So, I guess my view is I don't see really substantial gains making that push to biweekly payroll. I think we've tried to become more efficient in the other ways on the back end instead.
So nothing to be saved at this point.
I
What about
very,
mailing costs?
There is no.
there's no mailing costs.
Everything's hand-
There's no mailing. We don't mail checks.
So on the fire end of things, so will their pay stub just be eliminated?
For what?
Like on the fire, like I get direct deposit through the fire department.
Yep.
I still get a stub.
Yeah. Oh, you get that, you get the slip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will that just be eliminated?
No, you'll still get that.
Still get that?
No, basically, what ends up happening, where, one of our points of inefficiency now is a paper timesheet is made, and particularly for police and fire, because there's a lot of complexity in terms of accounts, it then gets aggregated into a summary sheet that then comes up here, that then gets so it gets entered in the department in their internal spreadsheet. It gets re-entered into our electronic system up here. So what I'm starting with, and starting in police first and then moving over to fire, is that their data entry would go right into our system. And then all we're doing is reviewing it. Because part of the problem is everybody's entering the same information 4 times.
So you're talking payroll, on payroll.
Yeah, on payroll. On the end user end, nothing changes. Because I actually, we've talked about, there are some people who just, like, I really don't need a paper direct deposit slip every week.
Right.
Can we email those?
No.
Well, that's why, like,
Yeah.
my wife signs into, she doesn't get
Yeah.
one, it's like a portal that she signs in. If she
Our-
wants to see her pay stub, that's how she sees
Our
it.
system is not smart enough to do that.
I haven't seen a pay stub.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Are you on the same thing?
Yeah, I'm on the
Same
same
thing,
thing.
yeah.
I would love to be able to suppress or let people opt in for that, but I have no other option in the system that we run.
Okay.
And I'm not going to recommend spending a lot more money. You may recall, I think this might have been before you came here. I mean, I investigated other systems that would give us a lot more efficiency, but they were very expensive and not a lot of payback on it.
So, anything else on bi-weekly? I will tell you that the several employees I even suggested it to, they're not in favor of it.
No.
So, not that, I mean, that matters. I just,
No,
I'm not seeing a savings. I'm not
No,
sure
if
why
it,
we
if it was
push
a
it.
huge cost savings, then,
it is. I mean, like I said, we tried to make everything else more efficient when we didn't go that way.
Yeah,
so.
and Frank, I think you brought it up the last meeting, right?
No, the meeting before, I don't know.
Before,
meeting before.
what, it was the
Who
meeting he
knows?
was there, it was the
yeah, he
14th,
was here.
You were
Jay
there?
was here, right?
No, I wasn't here.
No, this came up on the 14th, I think.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I think,
Probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
Everything just,
I can tell
every
you-
day blurs together.
blurs together.
I
Yeah.
can tell you that I have a note on the 14th that I brought it up.
Yeah.
So then, okay.
You probably brought it up in my absence, because if you had brought it up when I was here, I could have given you 90%
But everybody
of
in the
that
office
answer.
while you were out said it was a great idea.
I don't know who you're talking
No,
about.
okay, all right. You come in and suggest that tomorrow, and I'll be sitting back with the popcorn watching.
All right, so we're gonna,
Okay.
that issue, no longer have to worry about it.
All right.
I mean, if there was savings, there was savings. I don't see it neither.
All I was asking is there any?
Yeah,
savings?
no, it's fair to take a look at those.
All right, milfoil control?
Milfoil control, just heads up, Conservation Commission got their special permit to apply pesticide to
They
a
started
portion of
too,
Darrah
right?
Pond. What?
They started.
And they're done.
Yeah.
It was in, they're done, they've done, this year's treatment.
Is it fair to indicate that there was a disagreement going on also about the use of the chemical?
There continues to be there's disagreement in the state permitting agencies too, on it. So it's granted by one agency, and, other agencies in the state that perhaps didn't agree did their best to try to foment anxiety after the permit was issued. That said, I did copy the permit. One of the things to know that I think is important to know is that, what had been proposed here was a multi-year chemical treatment over several parts of the lake. Each of those multi-years has to be approved separately by DES based on the language in the current plan and the approach across multiple state agencies. My sense is that the Conservation Commission will be needing to develop a longer run management program. I think we had originally hoped that we could do this several year chemical treatment. I'm guessing that their next cycle will be more manual harvesting, and then it'll probably cycle back to chemicals, so it'll be a longer plan than originally thought, and potentially either more costly and/or maybe less effective. I mean, we'll know how effective this treatment was probably in a few weeks.
I say like 14 days or so.
Yeah, it'll be,
Yeah, it was like 14, 20 days.
so,
Okay. Any questions around the milfoil? All right, next is fireworks. I
It's-
think we talked about it based on public input, but
yeah, I guess my only question on this, and I'm not sure that if I posted, did I post anything on this one? No. I thought I did. At
I
one
know Frank was asking because I think he wants to make sure we're on target.
Right, I thought I had shared, but apparently I have not. I had a couple samples of some, it's
It's
helpfully
on-
down under open items.
It's an open item, yeah.
It's down under open items. A couple sample ordinances I had seen from other communities. So I think when John and I talked about after I came back, we had talked about, hey, we're gonna have a hearing and get some input. And then as I leafed through the minutes, I realized Selectman Lemire volunteered me to write an ordinance. So,
I forgot to tell you that.
so I'm happy to write an ordinance, but I guess or not. I'm just looking for at least
Well, I
if
would-
you have any starting parameters on what you're thinking.
I think we talked about having a public hearing to make a decision whether or not whether or not we do a partial ban or do nothing, and wait to bring it to the voters.
My recollection is that we said we would have a public hearing so that we
Right.
could discuss,
That's all I would say we do, yeah.
not what we're gonna do, but if you're gonna have a public hearing, you gotta have some ordinance or something you're bringing forward. If you wanna just have an open meeting and invite people in, that's a different issue, but it's not a public hearing. My question really is on the issue of, the original thinking was that we could limit the use of fireworks between certain hours.
That was what we would take for the public hearing, right?
And that was what we were gonna, I thought, bring forward to the
Yep, you're
public
right.
hearing.
You're right.
But then that becomes, I'll call it, and I think I said something on this, not at the meeting, but in other venues, that it's really now a noise ordinance and it's not a fireworks issue.
Yes.
Which we addressed.
Which
the noise
we,
ordinance
you know,
last
we,
year.
we entertained a noise ordinance that tackled actually a whole range of the issues that were brought up under public input. And ultimately, the board opted not to go that way. We think they were concerned sort of about
It was
its
enforcement. It
reach
was
and enforcement
yeah. It was-
and the like. What I did is, the two samples I had, I think one was an outright ban, one was a
Permissible use.
permissible, and I think in some cases it actually is, it has, it requires permitting. One of the interesting things is, you want to have a backyard fire pit, you go to classes and you get certified. Through, you get a permit through the fire department. You want to shoot off fireworks? Go for it. So I guess that, as I started looking at some of the options, I wanted to get a sense of, if I am writing an ordinance, obviously you can modify it, but I didn't feel like being totally off base. So you're looking at a time restriction? Are you looking at day
I think that's what we-
restrictions?
I think that's what we thought about doing as an action. If we were to do anything, that's what we would do as an action of this board.
Yeah, I don't
The
think
final, whether we totally ban or make what we do permanent would be the voters would vote on that.
Okay.
I don't know if my preference is if we're gonna need an ordinance for the public hearing, which yes, it does make sense, we'd have to have something to present, it would be the Swansea one.
Okay.
It's partial, it's permitted, we know who they are, that kind of thing. Maybe we gotta water it down a little bit. But maybe if you can bring this into one of our docs, we can start massaging it between now and when we do the public hearing. That was my next question. When did you target the public hearing?
Well, that's really why I wanted it on the agenda.
Yeah,
so
'cause I was
knew
thinking
that.
I think it was gonna be the first one of the.
My
second one.
understanding was you were targeting the first meeting in August.
That's what I originally targeted. The question is, do we have enough time? We won't be able to approve this until off.
Right, I mean, if you would rather me schedule it the second meeting in August, so you can actually have a,
What do you need, a posting of 10 days?
yeah, I need a posting of 10 days. So I can do either one, but, and it's a newspaper of 7, I think.
Getting the draft ordinance, review it at the first meeting in August, with the intention that you'd bring it to a public hearing.
On second meeting.
That would make sense.
Okay, that's
Let's
fine,
target that,
that's fine,
all right?
okay.
And once you can get this into ours, where you can clean it up to be more sort of Litchfield specific.
Yep.
Share it out to the board and
Yeah.
ask for comment.
Yep.
I know you'll get a lot.
Hopefully just to Jason.
Yeah, well, using the comment engine, so it'll all be only Jason seeing it, so. Okay.
All right,
All right, anything else on fireworks?
nope, thank you for
Okay.
the clarification.
Next is selectmen reports. Anything from Mr. Bork?
Nope.
Mr. Byron?
Last Thursday, there was a budget committee meeting. The budget committee, was going to consider, how to address, contracts, lease purchase contracts. It started out that because there was not a full budget committee present, that they would delay it until we had more members present. And then what happened was they decided to go ahead with considering it, and then it was withdrawn. So there's no action taken on that. There was a discussion that I asked for, which was how to, how will the budget committee fund the purchase of police cruisers in the budget? There seemed to be some level of discussion that it should go into the budget as fine as a purchase. There seemed to be some agreement to that, but the vote on it failed. So I'm not sure where we stand on that at the present moment. My intention would be, once we have a fuller committee present, to bring that back up again and to try and resolve that. I'm hoping that the budget committee would put that into the budget, because I think that makes the most sense. It's not like we have just, some type of epiphany, or we need to decide that, hey, let's get a cruiser this year. We're getting cruisers pretty much, with the exception of 2014, every year that we run, and we need to have a steady supply of cruisers coming through, because unfortunately they have high mileage that they develop. So that was one thing. There were a couple questions asked by the budget committee. They wanted to understand why the police department lieutenant's overtime was so high. I sent that to Jason. Jason responded that the overtime was high because the lieutenant was filling in for the sergeant in some cases, and because we had several incidents in town where we needed to have a senior officer present to be able to handle the scene. Budget committee also wanted to understand what we could do in terms of reports. The budget committee made a decision that they would like to get monthly reports. So, they did not say they didn't really want the weekly reports, but if they only want the monthly, that's fine. And just send them the monthly. They've accepted those in PDF form, so.
Can I
can go
add
from there.
one thing on that?
Yes.
The individual who seemed to be driving that conversation on what type of reports he was hoping to get from the committee, or from us, we don't back accrue. I think there was this.
Question whether we.
There was
charge back the
there was a
ticket.
question about when you send me a
You book it
report.
when you pay it.
Right, when you send me a report
Yeah.
July 27th, how do I know what happened between the 28th and 31st? You don't, because we don't book things by month.
He was asking, there's two types of accounting. One type books it on the date that it was committed to, the other type commits it on the date that it was paid. And I know Gatsby requires towns to do it in one way or the other. I forget
Yeah.
what Gatsby requires, but the long and the short of it is, he wanted to know whether we did, I think it's called ledger versus
Yeah.
accrual accounting.
We don't accrue, we just do ledger transactions. I watched the meeting, and, I think the questions around, you know, the data they're looking for out of the town is great, but I don't see them asking for the same data from the school. And I don't see them analyzing the budget the same way they analyze the town's budget. The town is 1/5 of the tax rate, the school is 4/5, you know. If they put as much energy into the school side, I would be happy with it, but it just feels like, you know, our budget is very clear, it's very predictive, you know, we're pretty transparent about what the stuff is. It would just, I would hope they would get the same information from the school, and I don't believe the school is providing the same information. I don't see the questions being asked the same way.
I did start the meeting out by saying that the Board of Selectmen are not looking to continue or get into any long-term headbutting with the Budget Committee. We each have a job to do, and we each have responsibilities, and we should put whatever's happened behind us and work to the best effort going forward.
Then I'll reserve the rest of my comments. Okay, any other selectmen reports?
So that was about it. They did start, by the way, to ask about when we would be getting a schedule to them of what the budgets would be coming through in the future and stuff, so.
I'm assuming we were targeting the same time we did last race, October, the whole month of October.
I'd say October again, I think.
Did I hear Cindy was gonna reach out to Jason and start work on the schedule, or were you gonna work on the schedule?
I'm assuming she's reaching out to Jason.
If you can backdoor our schedule from last year into it.
Yeah, I might,
reach out to her soon.
now that, you know, I was waiting, now that I have direction as to what you guys are doing, now I can build their schedule.
All right, Conservation Committee, obviously, we already spoke about it, that was the big thing that was going on the last two meetings, so I don't need to belabor that. All right, there was, no items moved from consent, there was no other business, which was fireworks, which we already covered. Is there anything else the board wants to discuss? Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
I don't want to leave, so just kidding. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries 3-0-0. That'll be it for our meeting. Our next meeting will be August 11th, 6 o'clock here at Town Hall. Everybody have a great week. Have a good summer. Or less of July.